everyone, welcome back to the Earthdawn Survival Guide, a podcast for all novices, masters, disciplines, paths, players and game masters, and the questers that are Dan and Josh. I am Dan.
I am Josh.
Yes, and welcome to episode 85. How did we get here?
One step at a time, man.
Absolutely. 85, so 84 at a time. We are finally here now. We've got a couple of emails to get to, so we'll handle all things quizzical. And then another in our Arrowentical episodes. We're going to talk about Charcoalgrin after we handle some emails. So if you have any questions for us, if you'd like us to read your email, feel free to contact us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. And off we go. So, good morning. We have a good morning and a good afternoon emails. So oddly enough, we're going to do this all at night when Josh and I are recording. So good morning. This doesn't need to be on the podcast. Tough, Anthony. We're going to read it on the podcast anyway, because whatever. Just hoping for a response. Some of my friends used to do an RPG demo day every other month pre-COVID. I can't even remember pre-COVID now. So yeah. Recently, we've worked with the store and have started to do them again. The store would like us to try to promote things that they actually carry, but I have a desire to present Earthdawn 4th Edition. When the store checked on FASA games, they saw only a book or two were available in print. Is there a link that I can present to a vendor so that they can get books if they want to carry them on their shelves? I would like to increase the awareness of a game that I have always loved and feel others would thoroughly enjoy. Anthony, I love it as well. I would love for you to do this. Josh, take it away.
Yes. So, if you are looking for books, we have been kind of having issues with people getting books into stores. The best way to go, I would think, would be to go through Studio 2 Publishing. They are our distributor, North American distributor. If you are in the UK or Europe, you'll actually want to reach out to Ralpartha Europe. I know things are really weird in Europe in terms of getting stuff from the UK into Europe and vice versa, but those are the places that you want to go. The website for Studio 2 is studio2publishing.com. I don't know how up-to-date their actual website is, but there should be contact information on there. Any retailers who want to stock our books, whether Earthdawn or 1879 or Demon World, reach out and get in touch with them. That is the best way. They should have everything that we have released thus far and should be able to hook retailers up with product.
And if all else fails, Anthony, I think we can get you a direct link right back to you on your email.
Yeah, I'll do that as well. But this is good info for anybody out there who might want to try getting stuff. That is probably the best way, is to contact Studio 2 directly. And
we don't mean anybody, we mean everybody. Anyone and everyone. On to Tim.
Tim again.
The co-host, by the way, of the Are You Just Watching podcast. Good morning, gentlemen. He calls us gentlemen. He doesn't know us very well.
He knows me pretty well.
I'm a salty pirate here. In the discussion regarding the Travaris sourcebook of episode 47, Dan gushes about the quality of the map. I really do. I really do gush about that map. It's a fantastic map.
It's a nice looking map.
Included with the first print run of the sourcebook, Josh comments that it could not be included in the second printing due to the source, but that he hoped to make it freely available as a digital download. I was wondering if that download was ever made available, and if so, is it still available? I don't see it in either the blog posts or the online shop. Can you please enlighten me?
It is supposed to be showing up in the shop. When I first saw this email come across, I got in touch with Ross and said, hey, remember when we went to the second printing and we talked about doing this? I just got an email asking where it is. Can we do that? And he said, yeah, sure. Just get me the file and a little write-up about it. And I did, but I don't see that it has actually been posted yet. I will poke Ross and remind him that he should have everything that he needs to put it up in the shop. It will be free, but it will be available through, I'm not exactly sure what heading it will be under, but should be available through the web shop at no charge at some point.
Yes.
And I suspect that we'll probably make an announcement. So if you follow us on the social medias and such, probably also announce it in on the Discord. I know Tim's on the Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll poke Ross to remind him that he was supposed to do that because he's got access to the shop and I don't.
Well, and this episode goes live on September 1st, so maybe by then this will all be taken care of.
It's possible that it might have been resolved by that point, but yes.
So
thank you for the question and for reminding me to initially reminding me to do something that I said we were supposed to do.
Hey, listeners, keep us on our toes. We promise something, get back to us. Make sure we get that taken care of. And by we, I mean Josh, because I'm not involved in this in any way other than making sure I'm ready to record. And even that's iffy sometimes. So anyway, good afternoon. See, now we're into the afternoon. I wish to express my continued enjoyment of the Lore Masters, Dan and Josh. Okay, Lore Master, Josh, Dan, co-host. I am trying to keep up on Josh's. I can't even keep up anymore on what Josh knows. I will admit that the first impetus of this letter, good word
It's
choice.
a $3 word for you.
Exactly. I will admit that the first impetus of this letter is to send a correction. Josh said that a mage could get melee weapons as a skill to become a Windmaster, but page 76 of the companion says, skills cannot meet requirements, only talents and knacks.
Yes, that's correct. I made a boo-boo.
It happens.
Yeah. If a requirement for a path is something that is available as a talent or skill, you should, rules as written, have the talent version of it. There are some, like, for example, the Brother of Stone, which requires Obsidian lore at a certain rank in order to get it. That's only available as a skill. Obviously, in that case, the skill is sufficient. But if there is, like, melee weapons for the Windmaster, rules as written, you should have it as the talent. It means basically that as a magician, you're not going to become a Windmaster unless you pick up a second discipline that is martially inclined. Because magicians don't get melee weapons even as an option.
Fair enough. So thank you, Insaniac. And he would love to hear Icewing covered next. He's one of the most common dragons to be seen in the published Earthdawn adventures, and because of where his lair is. Thank you again for the great content.
He is
just
not
for
next.
that, he's not next. He's like second to last. Just because you asked him to be next. I'm kidding. That was the way I had it planned out in the first place. So we'll get to Icewing eventually. Keep listening. I promise you we'll get there. It will happen eventually. But that ends our email segment for this portion of the show. Until next time. No, I'm just kidding. Feel free to email us your questions or anything else you want to hear at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, all emailers today. Let's get down to Charcoalgrin.
Yes.
Because I think we can finally get to that here. So I was looking it up, and I meant to go back through and find some other things listed in the Parlainth boxed set, because nowhere could I find an actual description of Charcoalgrin and what she looks like. Because I imagine a Charcoalgrin would be like black-toothed dragon of some kind, and that isn't necessarily pretty, but that's the only thing I can come up with in my head. So maybe, a white dragon, black dragon, gray dragon with black teeth? That's all I can think of. You got anything?
Yeah. I am not aware, unlike Alamaze, where I amazingly read the thing beforehand and was glad that I did because it allowed me to talk about so many things. Did not get the chance to read Charcoalgrin or go digging back into the Parlainth book to find out about her.
Well, that's okay, because Mountain Shadow says that Charcoalgrin herself is an adult dragon, not a great dragon. And that's not a slight. Great is a term, not a term of endearment. But that Charcoalgrin is herself a talker. She will talk endlessly. And it reminds me of my half-brother, who will talk for 3 hours on any subject and 6 if he knows anything about it. But vanity is her main weakness, because talking about herself is topic number 1, topic number 2, and topic number 3. And maybe by the time you get to topic number 4, she'll remember that you're in the room. But Charcoalgrin herself is vain and self-important, and I think otherwise likes to hide behind a curtain, so really nobody actually knows what she looks like, because even it's never, like I said, she's never described. So if you meet her, maybe you only talk to her behind a curtain or something. I'm not entirely sure. So
yeah, she lairs in the former Imperial palace of Parlainth.
Yes.
The main administrative building or palace or equivalent thereof.
Yeah, the big one.
The big one. I actually pulled up the PDF of the
Dragon Source
Parlainth box. Well, well, I've got that too, but of the Parlainth box to scan really quickly through the section where she's described to see if there is a description there. No, it doesn't look like there's any description, that's physical description anyway.
No. But the cool thing is if you do have the Parlainth box set, it actually has Charcoalgrin's like first edition stats.
First edition stats, yes.
Yeah. So that's interesting because not a lot of the other dragons have any stats.
No, we have in the Game Master's Guide sort of a standard stat block for dragons. And there is an example of a specific dragon in the GM guide.
Yeah.
But we don't have stats for all of the dragons. The initial plans were to have more information about the dragons, named dragons, the great dragons, and maybe a couple of notable adults in the companion, but time and space prevented us from including those. We did have some information about them that was included in the GM's guide in the sort of setting chapters. We talk about the different political factions and power players, and the dragons are summarized. The great dragons are summarized in that to give you a little bit of an idea of what they're up to, but no stat blocks or anything like that.
Yeah, because even in the Empty Thrones personalities cards, the great dragons themselves have these little symbols next to their stats. They don't exist.
Little question marks.
Yeah. So just in case you were going to go looking for those, if you have those, and I have those, they're not there. So if you stat them, they can die. If you don't stat them, they're hard.
Excuse me. So I just looked in the GM's guide because I thought Charcoalgrin does have stats in the Game Master's Guide.
Oh, cool.
Both Charcoalgrin and Asante and Night Sky all have full stat blocks.
You are correct.
Page 445, and the stat block itself is on 447 because Charcoalgrin's got like a 2-page write-up as it is.
Yeah. Okay, so don't buy the Parlainth box set. You don't need it anymore.
Please, buy the Parlainth box set. The Parlainth box set is fantastic. It is
fantastic. But I'm saying, we're here to promote 4th edition stats. That's what we got.
And a lot of the info about Charcoalgrin that we're talking about here, or at least the kind of basic outline of it, is in the GM's guide. A lot of the info from that is taken from her write-up in the Dragon's source book, which provides a lot more background detail and information about her than was previously known prior to that box set release.
So we've covered that the 4th edition, it also updated her timeline a little bit from what the 1st edition box set had. So what is the update to her timeline in whatever format you want to give it to us? Is it a whole lot or?
No, not really.
Okay.
We didn't have a whole lot when the 4th edition core books were being developed that was going to be a change for Parlainth. Mm-hmm. The changes and development of Parlainth are something that are kind of ongoing with the Legends of Barsave adventures that Kyle and the guys are working on.
Yes.
Charcoalgrin's location, what she's up to and what she's after are largely unchanged from what they were previously. She's got the lair in the northern quarter of Parlainth. She's got her followers, the Unforgiveables. Mm-hmm. Her personality is still very much the same, and her goals and objectives are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And thus far, we haven't had any direct interactions in the adventures with Charcoalgrin, although there have been a few interactions with members of the Unforgiveables whenever the adventure takes folks either into the northern quarter or into the North Catacombs, which I think happens once or twice in those adventures. Then the Unforgivables kind of need to be dealt with. That's the situation with Charcoalgrin. Not much of an update. As an adult, rather than a great dragon, she was not ever really involved in the machinations and plots of the great dragons with regards to Thera and now Iopos. And I think part of that is intentional, that she is kind of off in Parlainth to be a power focus there, one of the many power brokers, areas around which things can be developed and built without needing to get her involved in greater provincial affairs. I think Parlainth has always been, and I think wisely so, walled off a little bit into its own area and kind of just set up and a place for game masters to really flesh out and make their own.
I can see that. So Charcoalgrin is, as I said, vain, talks about herself a lot, and she's arrogant because she is the big fish in the very small pond of Parlainth and Haven. So it's really kind of uncontested territory. No one else really wants it. But I think part of the reason that she's there is she's still fixated on Parlainth pre-Scourge. But she did come across the council. She's now committed two offenses to the Dragon Council. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, that the first one is that she taught Parlainth's magicians magic heretofore unknown in Thera, and that was how to hide Parlainth in the astral pocket. So that's probably the first one, right?
Yeah.
Or am I close?
That's an interesting question.
Fair.
Much like all of the information provided by the Outcast in the Dragon essays in the Old Dragon sourcebook, from which a lot of the information about the dragons has been drawn, the accuracy or veracity of the information there is to be determined. I certainly think that the backstory that we get for her, where her lair was in the mountains near Parlainth and watched them and contacted them, and certainly even if she didn't necessarily teach them the ritual outright, it would not surprise me if she were involved in some capacity.
Yeah.
Given the détente between the dragons and Thera, in a sense of you don't mess with us, we don't mess with you kind of situation, in the wake of Thera's attacks on dragons and then the dragons' reprisal of Thera, the decision of, like, the dragons will be like, okay, you don't mess with us and we will no longer mess with you. That Charcoalgrin was kind of going against the general status quo at that time.
Yeah.
And part of that appears to be driven by her relationship with a particular Theran magician.
Euripimes?
Yeah.
Eyripemes. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but thought it was pretty close.
That's as good as I would say.
Pretty sure it's Greek sounding, but Euripimes is what I can think of. So she does tend to fixate on that specific magician from Parlainth, or I believe is well passed on by now, well past the Scourge.
Yes.
Because the second offense to the council was she taught him shape-shifting abilities.
Reportedly, as the Outcast says. So, grain of salt, pound of salt, salt lick, take your pick. Charcoalgrin's involvement with the Therans is accurate. In the essay, Mountain Shadows does sidebar and say, we were lenient with her when we found out what she was up to.
Well, because she helped finance Thrall's military against Thera. So, reportedly. So, a little bit there. So she does kind of pick sides. So she likes Parlainth for, I think, its opulence and grandeur, and that it fell from grace, and, the magic she taught everybody didn't quite work the way she wanted it to. And when it popped back into this plane of existence, it's not as grand and nice as it should have been.
The shape-shifting is more of an open question.
Yes.
Because Mountain Shadow's comment is, if this is true, she was really good at hiding it from us because it didn't come up during the council that we held about the whole Parlainth thing.
Yeah.
And if it's true, then she still needs to be taken to task for that, even though it was centuries ago and the person that she taught is probably dead by now. And that is actually one of the other sort of semi-open questions, and one of the notions that is going on with regards to why Charcoalgrin is lairing in Parlainth and what she is after. Much like everybody else in Barsave, when the Therans cast the spell to erase Parlainth from the memories of everybody, Charcoalgrin's memory was affected as well,
Yes. Magic was that powerful.
Yeah. And came back when the city was returned. It appears that a lot of the individuals who were around when Parlainth was there previously had their memories returned when Parlainth returned. Unfortunately, all of them are ancient and powerful beings, and so are not particularly forthcoming with the information that they have about the city. But Charcoalgrin was one of them, and discovering and remembering the city and her relationship with the people within it, returned to Parlainth. And one of the things that she is desperate to learn is the fate of Euripides in particular. You know, just to find out what happened to him, whether that is death or whether he managed to escape in one of the astral lifeboats that the city reportedly had. And it's possible, you know, weird magical shenanigans and stuff could result where it's possible that he might still be alive.
Yeah.
I think that is a really long shot, to be fair. But Charcoalgrin is somewhat obsessed with this and the history of Parlainth while it was isolated and what happened to the people during that time. And so that's actually a way, if you've got a game that's revolving in or around Parlainth in some respects, you could actually bring Charcoalgrin's interest to bear if you've got a group that discovers some bit of lore, a journal, something that, you know, might point to the lost history of the people of Parlainth during the civil wars that raged in the time after its isolation and so forth. Of course, she's got her Unforgiveables, who are also sort of doing work and exploration in that regard, although they also function in a sense as kind of forward guards and eyes and ears for the territory that she has claimed. I don't know how technically she views the entire city as her domain. She very clearly controls the northern quarter, the northern district of the city.
Yeah. Imperial Palace, her lair especially, but the northern quarter, I think, definitely that's her territory.
You know, and so that is an area that you kind of need to be careful mucking about in. But it is a sizable area, and the Unforgivables are sort of easily bribed and manipulated and threatened into
coerced
by more powerful adepts. They all kind of live a difficult, hard-scrabble existence, looking to receive scraps from their mistress's table. She doesn't have a lot of fondness for them, but finds them useful in terms of what she is after. But having a group that is researching, especially into other parts of the city, and maybe find information that might shed light on these areas of interest for her, even if it's something that the group might not necessarily recognize as connected. She has a lot more information and, of course, that keen, draconic mind to put pieces together.
Well, and her Unforgivables, just so you know, are not necessarily just name givers. She's got griffins and ogres and gargoyles and all kinds of other semi-intelligent creatures running around. So it's not just... not that you don't have to be careful and go for it.
In a very similar way to how other dragons have animals and spirits and servants other than name givers working for them. It's certainly not unusual for Charcoalgrin to have other servants beyond that. The Unforgivables are sort of the collective term for her servants, although generally most folk in Haven and so forth probably wouldn't consider gargoyles or griffins or more traditional like animals, even fantastic animals, as Unforgivables, although ogres might fall under that category because they are able to communicate and so forth. We won't get into the discussion of whether ogres are name givers here. That is an entirely different subject.
Feel free to email that question in later. We'll get to that then.
That's the situation. And with her temperament as being one who enjoys hearing herself talk, It's never discussed who her sire / clutch parent is.
Yeah.
But I sense something of a similarity in her personality to the late lamented Vastenjas, who was also keen on talking at great length to people who, willing to put up with him and his digressions and so forth. I think there's quite a bit of similarity there. And so while it's not canon, I don't have a problem with the idea that she might be one of the clutches that Vastenjas might have tended to at some point in the past.
Well, and as much as she likes to talk, especially about herself, the fact that she won't claim credit for maybe having financed Thrall's military would be a huge leap because, you're going to keep that secret and you like to talk about yourself? That's a deep, deep secret then. You really don't want anyone to know that. That's kind of an odd personality trait. So I like the fact that they have put in all these personality traits into this dragon that inhabits the northern quarter of just one city of Parlainth, because her previous lair was in the Kakavik Mountains pre-Scourge. So she moved into this probably because she's suffering from depression and all the fixation she's got on Euripides and the failure of that magic and the failure around Parlainth. And so she's brooding and she's holed up and you're not allowed to see her because she's behind heavy curtains. And so she's got this shut-in, depressive personality going on with this character as well. So it's not that the creators of all these different dragons just said, dragons, slap some, a little backstory on them. This is a huge interwoven tapestry of a backstory for this dragon who's defied the council, who has offended the council twice, has worked with the Therans on hiding Parlainth, but then backed Thrall's military against Thera later on, and has made a friend of Torgak and the restless troll in Parlainth. And so there's this very complex personality going on.
She's a really interesting character that does not get a lot of exploration outside of the Dragon Sourcebook and the Parlainth box.
Yeah.
The Outcast, I think, is speculating with regards to her friendship with Torgak.
Yeah.
Because of the way that he puts it in the book, it's both are content to leave one another alone, surely the mark of a lasting friendship, which I think says almost as much about the Outcast as it does Charcoalgrin.
Charcoalgrin, yeah. Or Torgak.
Torgak or Charcoalgrin.
Yeah.
The other interesting speculation that the Outcast puts forward is that Charcoalgrin may be interested in taking Parlainth back into the astral pocket that it was hidden in during the Scourge, perhaps in an effort to be where Euripides and the other astral lifeboats might be still drifting in some pocket dimension or nether realm or something like that. And that's a really interesting idea. And
that would make an epic campaign.
I think it's curious that Mountain Shadow doesn't really address that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like so much of the better FASA, or sort of original FASA products.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Dragon Sourcebook and we're talking about things like that, is that there are ideas that are put forward that are not necessarily confirmed or denied either way, but that become like ready-made adventure or campaign hooks.
Oh, totally.
The idea of what Charcoalgrin is up to is more than simply ruling over this small domain and gathering information. She actually wants to move the city back to where it came.
Yeah.
That is something that quite a number of people would be very interested in if that were the case. Not only the people in Haven and that are, eking out a living in the ruins and on the edges of it.
Yeah.
But if it goes back into the pocket dimension, all of the treasures and knowledge that have yet to be recovered from the ruins again become inaccessible.
Yep.
That's an epic campaign
in the making.
Just framework there.
Yeah.
What do you, as a group, how do your player characters learn about this? What are the ramifications of that? What kind of attitude might they have in terms of trying to stop that, if it's something that they want to stop, or maybe it's we can't stop it, but we just need to hitch a ride. That would be weird, but that's a possibility. We can't stop it, but we need to let people know that this is going to happen and perhaps do what we can to evacuate people safely from the city. Mm-hmm. You know, certainly Torgak would not be happy with his meal ticket vanishing out from under him, in a sense.
Exactly.
And there are plenty of other people who have interests and power basis in Parlainth that would get involved in that. I mean, what
as well.
You've got Vartigal, you've got whatever horrors and such might still be lurking around. You've got Torgak and the various adventuring companies. You've got the other villages and towns that are sort of in the surrounding area that don't really get a whole lot of detail written up about them in the Parlainth box or anything like that. But we do have one that features as a prominent aspect of one of the Legends adventures.
Yeah. I mean,
there's a lot of potential for interesting stuff there.
Yeah, because an entire economy would collapse if that city went back to the astral plane. That would change up a whole bunch of things. So I'm just going to get it from Josh right now. There's no plan to advance the timeline to where that happens.
Oh, that particular detail? No.
Okay, making sure.
Until we reviewed this chapter from the Dragon's book and I saw the Outcast's speculation about that idea, it wasn't even something that was on my radar. It's a fantastic campaign hook and story idea, but it's something that I think is better served by a game master developing themselves, unless we come up with some kind of really compelling story framework for it to happen.
Yeah, fair.
But no, it's certainly not something that had been on the radar until now.
Yeah, and still probably not on the radar because that's a whole lot of work, which is fine. We get that.
I do roughly know what the outline of the second half of the Legends of Barsave campaign series is.
Oh, gotcha.
It's planned for 16 episodes. We got the 1 through 8 are out and collected in the Haven Volume 1.
Just
9 is released. 10, 11, and 12 are in various states of development and will be coming out as they can. I know what the broad outline of what the rest of that is, and Charcoalgrin moving the city to the Astral Pocket Dimension is not in any way, to my knowledge, a part of that.
Well played, sir. Well played. So, yeah, the only other thing I can think of to bring up out of the essay totally was that her servants, the Unforgiveables, pliable as they may be, automatically act on a suspicious nature of anybody coming around, and that they're pretty thorough when they interrogate you, question you, beat you up, take your pick, bring you back to her lair, all that fun stuff. So they're loyal, they're thorough, they're suspicious, and, they may not be name givers. So always keep that in mind if you're a game master running them, or if you're a player running into them. Just beware that really almost anything you encounter, maybe not the Falsemen, maybe not the Waxmen, maybe not them, would be possibly in her purview.
Yeah, so. Charcoalgrin is a dragon that you would have involved in your game if your game involves Parlainth. Like a couple of the other dragons that we have yet to talk about, Charcoalgrin is designed for a specific campaign framework.
Yeah.
She's not likely to get involved in the affairs of other parts of the province, except where such things might directly come to bear on her interests in Parlainth. If you're going to involve her, you're going to involve Parlainth. If you're going to involve Parlainth, you're probably to some degree going to involve her. The two go together like cookies and cream.
Exactly. If you can recall, is she involved in any of the pre-published Parlainth adventures? Because there's 4 linked adventures in that one book. I've run them. I want to say that she's in there, but I don't think so.
Well, I know 2 of them she's definitely not.
Yes. One of them is the Passion Corollas.
Well, yeah, there's the Passions box. She's not involved in that one. That one pretty much all takes place entirely within Haven.
Yeah.
She's not involved in the Festival of the Dead. That's not the actual name of it, but it's the one that has the cadaver men coming and doing a little thing in Haven.
Oh, yeah. Remember that?
That one. I'm not going to say any more, but she's
awesome.
not involved in that one.
Love that one.
There's the one with Mind Trap, a horror. I don't think she's involved in that one.
Correct. So there's the last one, where
I think that one involves the twists more than the vaults.
Yes. So that was the first one I read.
And I don't remember what the fourth one was.
I don't remember what it's called, but I know it's where most of the undead scale the walls and begin to actually infest Haven, and so everybody has to get Johnny on the spot real quick and begin to push them back and cancel all that stuff because they climb over the walls. So I don't think she's involved.
No, she's not involved in any of them.
Okay.
I pulled up and scanned the back of the Parlainth Adventures book.
Yeah,
and
I didn't have it near me.
Well, I've got everything on PDF right on my computer, so I just grabbed that.
Speaking of Johnny
electronic formats are amazing.
Josh on the spot.
The summary on the back of the fourth one is a slumbering horror awakens to malevolent life and turns Haven into a seething cauldron of violence and suspicion. Gotcha. That's not Mind Trap. That's the other one, and that doesn't involve her either.
So of the 4 pre-published adventures in the Parlainth Adventures book, Charcoalgrin is not prominent in any of the 4. However, she is prominent in the rest of the Parlainth boxed set and is absolutely ripe for the using by any game master who wants to throw her in there. And I think I had it written down that I ran all 4 of those, and then I was going to bring everybody back to Parlainth real quick because Charcoalgrin requested an audience because they got away with something that she wanted to inquire about. So I was going to actually introduce my party to their first dragon ever, and it was going to be her.
Yeah, the fourth one involves a horror and the Western Catacombs.
No, because they stay out of the Northern Reach in those 4 adventures. But yeah, it's told when you get those 4 done, or any of those 4 done, it leaves like that one little pocket of Parlainth just ripe for the picking for any game master to begin to throw Charcoalgrin and her Unforgiveables in there. Use as you will.
Yep.
So that's most of the notes I've got on Charcoalgrin. Any further thoughts on development, 4th edition? Any major changes? We buffed her up at all?
No.
Okay.
She does have more specific dragon stats in the Game Master's Guide.
And powers.
If you want to get a sense of an adult dragon.
Yeah.
And understand that great dragons are steps above that. Her numbers are pretty...
They're nothing to sneeze at.
Nothing to sneeze at, no. You're looking at average steps for her powers in the mid to upper 20s for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Spellcasting step of 30. She's got both Nethermancy and Wizardry spellcasting at equivalent of 13th Circle.
Oof. Death rating's 204.
Yeah. She's got a couple hundred death rating.
Oh, yeah, and a physical armor of 30.
Yeah, her raw attribute steps are in the teens and lower 20s.
Yeah.
She is equivalent, sort of, she's kind of scaled as a 13th Circle challenge. We've talked about how a single creature, especially if we're looking at the GM's guide, is not really scaled to be a solo creature that you go up against because the action economy doesn't work. And what that means is that in any round of combat, the bad guy, the boss monster, will only get 1 turn, while each of the player characters will get a turn. And that means that the amount of punishment that a group can bring to bear, especially when you get into mid to higher circles and you have nice synchronicities of abilities and all sorts of things, it can turn bad guys, it can turn combat opposition into kind of a glass cannon situation where they might be able to get off 1 or 2 powerful things, but go down really quickly if the group can prepare appropriately and have high circle, high step number things that they're doing against them.
Yeah.
What you would want to do if you are in a situation where for some bizarre reason you're going to be using Charcoalgrin as like an enemy that player characters can fight and go against, a couple of different avenues you can take. One, take advantage of the fact that she would have minions,
Yes.
gargoyles, griffins, unforgivables, and just bring more
Oh, yeah.
bodies into that fight in order to make things a little bit more complicated for the group so that the action economy kind of balances out. What you may want to do in that situation is look at the group enemy rules that were introduced in Iopos and are restated in Empty Thrones, where you can take a group of mooks or lesser minions and pool them together to give them step numbers that would be threatening to a high journeyman or warden or master tier group without needing to pit them up against like an equivalent number of high circle characters or enemies. The other thing that you can look at is the legendary type template is something else that Morgan has worked on that gives sort of reactions in a sense to a boss monster to kind of balance out that like when they reach certain thresholds or in response to certain things that might be done, they get a free action at that point to counteract or whatever. It's similar to what you might see in other games in terms of that sort of thing. So that's how you would balance a combat encounter against a creature like a dragon or a powerful named horror or something like that.
Yeah.
The solution that some people might try to do in order to balance that is just simply to inflate the health ratings of the enemy so that they don't go down so quickly, but that still can start to feel like a slog. And so what you want to do is
19 of combat. So
try and make it interesting in terms of the situation. And yes, she's not a great dragon, but like any dragon, especially in her lair, she is going to be prepared and have a lot of tricks and traps and information and preparedness that you're going to need to overcome in order to appropriately stand a chance against her.
Well, yeah,
because dragons are not pushovers.
No. And, I looked at her stats real quick. 4 attacks per turn is nothing to sneeze at either. So she can bring it.
Yeah, she can still bring it in the multiple attacks.
And
but you also need to remember that, if you've got a group of 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th circle characters that might be going up against them, against her, the player characters, especially the combat types, the Beastmasters and the Warriors and the Swordmasters, are going to be having multiple actions, multiple attacks that they can make as well.
So here's the question we get to expand slightly beyond Charcoalgrin into most of Parlainth itself, since she's got a whole quarter kind of niched out for herself. If the game master runs a campaign where the intent is to have her die at the end and the player characters get to take her out, there's now a power vacuum.
Yeah.
In Parlainth that needs to be accounted for. What do you think would fill in that void where she's now gone? Because she's probably keeping some horrors at bay as well in her little quarter at the very least, because, she's, to your point, she's no slouch.
If Charcoalgrin goes down, the Unforgiveables would largely collapse and fall into petty squabbling amongst themselves. You might see some of the more powerful individuals try to take her place in terms of running the organization, but I suspect it'll largely end up being banditry and warlording and so forth. That kind of collapse among the Unforgivables does mean that the stuff that is sequestered in the Northern Catacombs, which is another big part of their job, is to keep the stuff in the Northern Catacombs in the Northern Catacombs.
Right where it is
more likely to be able to get out and start causing problems for the surface.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the question. That's the same kind of question that would happen when any powerful, like you might as well ask if Mountain Shadow gets killed, what happens? We didn't really explore it in the aftermath directly, but Vazden Jas died in the assault on Sky Point.
Yeah.
In the 4th edition timeline. Obviously, there are significant repercussions that happen as a result of that. Now, Charcoalgrin isn't a great dragon with the responsibilities that go along, but when you've got that significant a predator, when you've got an apex predator however self-absorbed and or depressed and vain she might be, that's going to cause quite a bit of upset. And I imagine a bit of a gold rush type situation from adventuring groups in Haven, and perhaps drawing interest in groups from other places, because with the Unforgiveables in disarray, other dragons could potentially be interested in her horde.
Yeah.
So that could come into play. But any kind of adventurer looking to strike it rich would perhaps be interested in seeing what they could do to venture into that area and get out with their hide and whatever treasure they might be able to recover. Let alone the knowledge and various other things that might also be hidden away in the depths of the Imperial Palace.
Yeah. I asked the question because her lair is, and I don't want to make this sound trite, slightly more accessible, being at A, ground level, B, Haven is nearby, but most of the other great dragons and adult dragons lair in very hard-to-reach places, up high mountain peaks or in the Badlands and things like that. So this is one of the more dragons that you should come in contact with more frequently, per se, than the others. And so that was why I asked the question, because I'm like, she's got a location that's fixed where it's, I can't say busy, but at least well-traveled or well-explored. So that was the reason for the power vacuum question on that.
And I imagine if you've got a group that is going to be taking an approach of, we want to kill a dragon, she is probably one of the quote-unquote easier ones maybe to deal with.
On that scale.
But also, because of where she is and what she's sitting on and so forth, I imagine that there are plenty of individuals who might be gunning for her in one way or another.
Oh, yeah.
So she would, like any dragon, she is a character in her own right. She is a significant power player and an intelligent, despite her mental circumstances.
Yes.
She is not a pushover, and again, epic campaign. My initial question would be, what's the motivation for a group to go after her? I mean, she's not really hurting anybody.
No.
If you just want to do a kind of, we want to kill a dragon, okay, fair, that's fine.
Yeah. May not want to go into her lair to do it, but,
Yeah.
If you can get her outside of her lair, go for it. But otherwise...
Again, epic campaign type stuff.
Yes.
I'm not going to, as the expression goes, I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum, but it's also something that for me as a game master, I would want there to be a story or motivation or something going on there rather than simply, hey, what's a big thing that we can stab?
Yeah, not a good idea. Have a story.
That's what horrors are for.
No, Charcoalgrin's got way too much story to not touch on any of those aspects before you traipse into her lair with bad intentions, because she'll fight you. So until we get to next time, if you have any questions for us about Charcoalgrin or anything else we covered tonight, or if ogres are in fact name givers, feel free to email us that question as well. We'll get to it when we get to it.
Don't.
We'll research that ahead of time. Otherwise, folks, on behalf of Josh and myself, Josh, thanks for making the time for this today, and this episode will be up here pretty quickly. So until next time, folks, it is time for you to go unforgivable. You're a legend.
That doesn't make any sense, Dave.
Absolutely not. That was the point.
Wow. Good night, everybody.